Welcome back to Quick Chats. I'm Katie Lyles with Lane Gorman Trubitt, Accountants and Advisors. Our Quick Chat series is now a playlist on YouTube, so be sure to like and subscribe below. All the links talked about in today's discussion will be linked in the description below, as well as our social media and an email account that you can send any of your questions to. Today I'm chatting with Patrick Reilly, an audit partner at our firm and the leader of the Paycheck Protection Program Task Force. Our task force is dedicated to help your company navigate the ever-changing PPP loan landscape. Please welcome Patrick.
Thanks, Katie.
Patrick, I know you've been working with companies to help them apply for PPP loans since they were announced in March of 2020. Since then, there have been many changes to who can apply and who can't. Can you tell me about the types of businesses that are eligible to receive a PPP loan under this new legislation?
Yes. First, I'd like to note that the guidance and regulations related to the second round of PPP have not yet been issued. The SBA must provide these regulations within 10 days of enactment of the Act. So that should be coming out here shortly or either this week or next week. But yes, the second round of PPP loans are available both to first-time qualified borrowers and for those that have previously received the loans in the first round. But there are some changes of how you qualify for that second PPP loan. To qualify, the amount of employees that you have has decreased from 500 to 300 employees. If you do have multiple locations and or franchises, and we're able to parse out those 500 employees per location in the first round, you can do so again, but at only 300 employees now. You also must show that you have had gross receipts during either Q1, Q2, or Q3 of 2020 that have declined from that same quarter of 2019 by at least 25%. If you end up applying in 2021, then you could use Q4 as a possible recording period as well. There's still also a necessity requirement that all borrowers must be able to certify that the current economic uncertainty makes this loan requirement necessary to support the ongoing operations of the applicant as of the date the application is submitted. This is not new from the first round, but it's still out there that when you do apply, you must state that there is some economic uncertainty, and that's why you need this loan. Some other changes for that second round of the PPP loan are that the maximum amount of the loan is now reduced from 10 million to 2 million. Also, borrowers with certain NAICS codes that are mostly restaurants and hotels are permitted to use a 3.5 multiplier of their average monthly payroll versus the 2.5 multiplier that other businesses have. But this is still subject to that $2 million limit. And then finally, forgiveness applications for loans under $150,000 will be simplified to a one-page certification that includes a description of the number of employees that the borrower was able to retain due to the loan and the amount of loan spent on payroll costs. Previously, this was $50,000, so that's a big help for them.
And if a company applied and received a loan, can they obtain a second one to help them until the pandemic is under control?
Yes, companies that have previously received a PPP loan can apply for the second round of PPP loans, provided that they use the entire amount of the first loan, or they will use that full amount by the end of their covered period. They also are subject to the reduction in gross receipts requirement that we discussed earlier. One other item of note is that if you returned any of the money from the first round, whether it was to get under the $2 million threshold, or just because you thought you might not be able to fully utilize the loan when it was first applied, you can reapply for those funds to get those returned to you.
The recent legislation also changed the way economic injury disaster loans interact with PPP loans. Will EIDL loan recipients have to deduct the EIDL loan amount from their PPP loan forgiveness amount?
Before, the borrower was required to subtract the amount of the EIDL advance from their total forgiveness. So if you had a PPP loan of $500,000 and an EIDL advance of $10,000, your total forgiveness was limited to $490,000. The new act now provides that EIDL advance will not reduce the PPP loan forgiveness. Also, the SBA has indicated that if you as a borrower have already submitted and received your forgiveness with that EIDL advance reducing your forgiveness amount, that you can amend your forgiveness application and get the full forgiveness back. We do expect there will be some more guidance on how exactly that'll happen going forward.
What changes have been made to the expenses that can be paid for with the PPP loans?
The new act expanded the type of expenses that can be included in your non-payroll expenses. These are still limited to the 60-40 ratio of payroll versus non-payroll expenses that the first act had. But now you can include some of the expenses for software, computing, processing costs related to payroll, HR, billing functions, or tracking supplies and inventory. It also includes covered property damage costs, such as costs related to property damage, vandalism, looting, anything that was not covered by insurance. Some of the other costs include covered supplier costs and covered worker protection expenditures, such as PPP, PPE equipment and expenses that the facility had to comply with requirements and guidance issued by OSHA, the CDC, or any state and local government after that March 1st, 2020. Again, we expect more guidance on what constitutes some of these expenses, but they can be used both in the first round of loans or the second one.
There are some concerns about PPP fraud. Can the Small Business Administration that oversees the PPP loans audit any recipient? If so, what can our clients and guests listening today do to protect themselves in case they are audited?
Yeah, the SBA has the ability to audit any of these loans. If they feel like they were taken out in bad faith or the funds were misused or any other cause they might have. Originally, the SBA came out with that any loan over $2 million will be subject to audit. But even if your loan is under that threshold, all borrowers must retain all employee records relevant to the forgiveness application for a period of 4 years following the date of submission. And all other records relating to the PPP and forgiveness application for a period of 3 years following submission of the forgiveness application. We also recommend that your company have a memo showing the economic uncertainty that your company was facing at the time of the loan. Also, with the extension of the loan being 24 weeks for the covered period, we recommend that in your forgiveness application, if you could get full forgiveness with just payroll, you should use that. That's just verifies that the loan was used for its intended purposes for paying employees if it's ever questioned.
I know there were some questions about tax deductions for specific expenses that were paid for with the PPP loan funds, and that it might violate the double dipping rule. Can you tell us a little about how the decision was made in regards to tax deductions?
Yes, this new act finally clarifies the tax deductibility question that we have all been waiting for. Prior to this act, they said that the loan forgiveness portion of these PPP loans was a non-taxable event. The problem was that the IRS came out and said that expenses paid for with PPP proceeds are not deductible for tax purposes. So it kind of washed out the non-taxable event that was that the original act was intended for. This new act specifically came out and said and then isn't both the forgiveness is a non-taxable event and those related costs are deductible on your tax return.
Final question, Patrick. Besides small business assistance, what other types of COVID relief were included in the CAA?
The CAA contains a number of additional items, including a $600 stimulus payment for individuals with income of $75,000 based on 2019 income. This phases out to zero at $99,000 of income. Also, there's an additional $600 per child in stimulus. The first act had a $500 per child. The relief package also expands and extends the employee retention tax credit established under the CARE Act to assist small businesses and nonprofits in retaining their workers and continuing operations through the pandemic. Unemployed individuals will receive an additional $300 per week in federal benefits for 11 weeks from the end of December 2020 through mid-March 2021. This amount represents a 50% decrease from the first federal boost, but that ran out at the end of July. The CAA also has grants for live venues, independent movie theaters, and other cultural organizations. It extends the eviction protection through January 31st, 2021. It includes rental assistance programs, vaccine funding, and a number of other programs.
Well, it sounds like there's funding that's going to help us stay safe for a bit. Thank you, Patrick, for sitting down with me today. If you have any questions or would like additional help for PPP loan forgiveness or your application, the link to the LGT PPP loan page is in the description below. As a reminder, if you have any questions that you would like answered in a future quick chat, you can leave it in the comments or email us at askus@lgt-cpa.com. Please join me next time when I sit down with Lucas Lachance to discuss revenue recognition for not-for-profits. Thank you and have a great day.